Hello, welcome to my first video on this channel. My name is Tara, I'm an interior designer, and it's a topic that I find pretty endlessly fascinating. Much of my career has been spent in the home building industry, and for several years I was designing show homes. And when you're designing a show home, obviously your main goal is mass appeal, right? You're trying to attract as many potential buyers as possible. That means you're paying a lot of attention to what is current, what is popular, what the latest trends are, and that's all fine. I just felt like for me, my own sense of my personal design style just kind of got lost in there somewhere along the way. And it's something that I really want to start focusing on again. Now, if you also feel like you're struggling to define your personal design style, then you are in the right place. This video is for you. Now, I know when it comes to interior design, there is just so much information out there and it can be really overwhelming. But my goal with this channel is to cut through all of the noise. I really want to get back to the basic guiding principles of interior design. And I also want to look more to the past to learn from historical design eras and movements and gain inspiration there rather than always fixating so much on the latest trends. I think it's also helpful to stop worrying so much about the opinions of others and to learn to trust our own gut a little more. These are things that are all going to help in refining our own personal sense of style and will hopefully help us create homes for ourselves that better reflect who we are, meet our needs, aid in our well-being, and are also timeless. So I want to just talk for a minute about the idea of being fashionable versus being stylish. Now, I think this is a concept a lot of us associate with clothing, but it absolutely applies to our interiors as well. So when you imagine someone who's fashionable, you're probably thinking of a person who dresses in a way that is very much on trend. Whereas someone who has a great sense of style is a person that dresses in a way that reflects who they are, regardless of what the trends are. So the same thing applies to interiors. A fashionable interior is one that looks current for the time, but a stylish interior is one that is timeless. It can't be pinpointed to a time or a place or a design era. And it's also usually a space that reflects the personality of the person or the people that inhabit it. Because just like what we wear, the way that we decorate our homes is a form of self-expression. As the late, great Iris Apfel once said, and I'm gonna read this so I don't mess it up, "In my view, you can't go to the future if you haven't come from the past." If you really want to develop your design style, you need to learn about the history of interior design. Because as we all know, nothing is truly original anymore. And an understanding of the history of design is going to help you recognize the originators that are still influencing what we see happening in design today. And that knowledge is just going to help you discern between what is good design and what is maybe just a bad imitation. An understanding of design history is going to be really helpful to you when it comes to things like shopping secondhand and buying vintage, because you're going to know how to spot the good stuff. And even when it comes time to buy something new, it's just going to better enable you to recognize what the good pieces are that are going to be timeless and are worth the investment. Having a lot of choice is great, right? But it can also be kind of challenging. You know, when there are a lot of possibilities open to you, trying to narrow things down and make a decision can be really hard. I know this is something that I struggle with. So this is where identifying some parameters can be really beneficial, because your design style is actually about more than just your personal taste. There are other factors that need to be considered as well. One of these factors you're going to want to consider is location. Where do you live? Because you might love the idea of a light and airy beach house, but that's not going to necessarily make a lot of sense for you if you live in, say, Iowa. And it doesn't mean you have to abandon that look altogether. You're just going to want to identify what some of the key elements of that style are that appeal to you and find other ways to incorporate them that maybe feel a little more authentic for where you are. So you could still do like a coastal color scheme, but instead of pairing it with like a beachy rattan, maybe you use some warm wood tones instead. Another really good reason for considering location is ease of access, because different regions are going to have different historical references. Try visiting some local vintage shops and antique malls to get a sense of what is common in your area. Because if you live in Vermont, stores there are probably going to look a lot different than if you are in Palm Springs. And if you can find a design era that you like that's common to your area, it's just going to make your life a lot easier. Now, this doesn't mean that this has to dictate everything that you do in your home. I mean, just because you live in California does not mean that your whole house has to be mid-century modern. But incorporating a few authentic vintage pieces into your space is never a bad idea. Another important consideration is the architecture of your home. Again, doesn't have to dictate everything that you do, but it is something that you do need to take into consideration. If you are someone who's lucky enough to live in a space that has really beautiful architectural details, then maybe you want to go a little simpler and more minimal in your furnishings so that you're not detracting from that. Whereas if you live in a new build that's feeling very plain, you're going to want to infuse warmth and character into the space that are otherwise a bit lacking. Something else you're going to want to think about is any possible limitations of your space. If we go back to the fashion analogy for a moment, I might think an outfit is beautiful on somebody else and hate how it looks on me. Same thing goes for interiors. What works really well in one space might not work so well in another. So accept the things that you cannot change and find creative ways to work with what you've got. Don't be afraid to break the rules. In fact, I highly encourage it. And I say that as someone who actually needs to work on that myself a little bit. Again, I think it's years of working on show homes where it's expected that everything matches and coordinates. It's not really a space that you can take a lot of risks in, but I think some of the best interiors are the ones that do take risks, that do something completely unexpected. So don't be afraid to think outside the box and try something new. Trust your gut. Now, I know we hear this all the time, and if you're someone who hasn't really fine-tuned your personal style yet, it might be easier said than done. But the more that you learn, the more that you immerse yourself in design, the easier it's going to be. Decisions will become more instinctual. You know how they say if you love something that you'll find a place for it? Well, it's true. Well, most of the time it's true. I mean, if it's a 10-foot dining table and you live in a studio apartment, maybe not. But most of the time, it's good advice. And lastly, take your time. Really, it's good to take your time. If you rush this process, you're probably just going to end up settling for some things that are maybe not the best choice. And believe me when I say this, because I have been very guilty of this myself in the past. But it really is best to take it slowly. Let the space evolve, hold out for the right pieces, and you're going to end up being a lot happier with the end result. Well, I hope that this video has been helpful. This whole concept of developing one's own personal design style is something that I find really interesting. Hopefully in the future I'll be able to post more videos that can help us all with this, myself included. Some videos about different design concepts and principles, historical eras. I would love it if you would subscribe and join me for those future videos. I'm really hoping we can create a community here where we can all engage and have conversations on these topics rather than me just talking at you. So I thank you so much for joining me, and I hope we'll see you in the next one.